2 years ago, police in Atlanta, Georgia began a manhunt for a Muslim minister named Jamil Abdul Alamin in the rifle shooting of 2 police deputies, killing one, seriously wounding the other. The manhunt was a major story because the man who was being sought was a student activist leader in the civil rights era of the 1960s, when he was known as H. Rap Brown. Police finally apprehended him, and after an unusually long delay, was tried by an Atlanta jury. Their verdict was handed down on March 9th last week.
On count 1 murder, we, the jury, find the defendant guilty. As to count 2 felony murder, we, the jury, find the defendant guilty. As to count 3 aggravated assault on a peace officer, we, the jury, find the defendant guilty. On count 4 felony murder, we, the jury, find the defendant guilty. As to count 5 obstruction of law enforcement officer, we, the jury, find the defendant guilty. As to count 6 obstruction of law enforcement officer, we, the jury, find the defendant guilty.
In this edition, we'll take a look at this man who was once known as H. Rap Brown. October 14th of 1943 in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. Like many other students, he was deeply aroused by the civil rights struggle against this nation's racism in the 1960s. And he joined the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, which was known as SNCC, which many white students also joined. SNCC was aggressive in their tactics.
We were the troops. We were the people who went to Selma 2 years before Dr. King ever saw that town. We were the people who went into rural Mississippi when the NAACP told us it was too dangerous, that you had to attack Mississippi from the outside, not from the inside. We were the people who, working for $10 a week, went all over the rural South in extremely dangerous circumstances, risking life and limb, going to jail, being beaten, harassed by policemen, not eating right, not having any clothes to wear. We were like an infrastructure that infiltrated these little towns. We helped identify the leadership. We told the leadership in these towns that if the community comes down on you, we'll stand between you and them. We'll be the first line of defense. And I think, without trying to be too modest, that we were the glue that held all of this movement together. Dr. King was the articulator and the spokesman. The SCLC workers became the instant organizers, going to a town, spend a couple of weeks, stir up emotion and passion, bring in Dr. King, makes a speech, have a march, out the next day. We were there for the long haul. We were there after the shouting had died down, after the cameras had gone.
There was a succession of SNCC leaders. John Lewis, who is now a member of Congress, Stokely Carmichael, who is known as Kwame Ture towards the end of his life, James Foreman. Among their many targets were racist voting laws. In 1964, however, their efforts to include Mississippi blacks in the state delegations to the Democratic National Convention was completely rejected by the party convention, and SNCC was angry.
From there, when we came back to Mississippi, SNCC had a staff meeting. It had to decide clearly, but the organization was at a juncture. We certainly couldn't follow this because we couldn't come back to the people and tell them try again next 4 years to be seated in the Democratic Party. We certainly couldn't do that. We couldn't do that. So we had to find new approaches. There was only one: organize the people into their own independent political party. So we had to fight inside of SNCC against those who were trying to make it a failure. We had to fight against the Democratic Party, which did everything possible to sabotage it. We had to fight against Wallace. We had to fight against the Ku Klux Klan. We had to fight against all the liberals who were once liberals, but now were telling us, don't get out the Democratic Party. This is the stupidest thing you could do, and who did everything possible, and though they tried, they crushed, they did everything, they couldn't stop the people. They organized an independent political party, and they gave it the symbol of the Black Panther.
The students became increasingly loud and confrontational to racist institutions in the nation. They loudly criticized and condemned police brutality, calling police pigs. Their slogan became Black Power. White students began to leave. H. Rap Brown succeeded Carmichael and more condemnatory of racism. He was quoted as saying that violence was as American as apple pie.
We'll have to,
he appeared on Like It Is.
America, in terms of where she goes and, you know, like who she controls, a whole sphere of influence is diminishing. America is fighting on about 5 to 6 different fronts right now. Latin America, you know, like Africa, Middle East, and Vietnam, and here domestically. So I think that, you know, given the system and given that it operates off the military-industrial complex, which means that war is profitable and that, you know, like General Steel, USS Steel must make steel for tanks to hire people, you know, to give people jobs so they can spend the money to buy other goods. The very fact that the system operates off that principle means that when the man comes back, when the man is run out of every country, then it will become necessary to wage war in his own country.
After a years-long series of altercations with police, vilification in much of the press, and the gradual end of the movement, Mr. Brown became a believer in the religion of Islam. He became a Muslim minister in Atlanta, Georgia, and has been known since as Jamil Abdul Alamin. This past Wednesday, March 13th, the state jury sentenced Mr. Alamin to life in prison without parole for the murder of a sheriff's deputy. Nonetheless, his contribution as to the struggle against racism in the civil rights era cannot be denied, despite being labeled regularly as extremist and black militant and radical and more. He was a major figure among student activism. As the chairman of the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, for example, he was in the thick of the fight to desegregate public facilities in Cambridge, Maryland. And Gloria Richardson was the leader of that struggle and is my guest now. Welcome to Like It Is.
Thank you very much.
Tell me about that struggle in Cambridge that you led. When did it begin, and when did Rap Brown, as he was then known, arrive?
All right. It began in 1961, and initially was started by a group of high school students, and then eventually, after they had almost hit the town on their knees fighting against segregation in public accommodations, the ministers in that town made a deal with the white powers to be, and everything kind of cooled out. So the parents got together and went to the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee and asked if they would supply us with skills and technical assistance in terms of organizing and be there for us. And we came back that April of '61, I believe, and spent about 18 months hard organizing, you know, in the bars, in the laundromats, in the churches, out in the county, did little newsletters. And in about 18 months it came together.